In this age of new normal, online is not your only option. Because new normal means new learning modalities and new learning possibilities. Let Vibal make learning offline possible with Smart Class. Smart Class contains pre-made daily modules sequenced according to DepEd's budgeted teaching and learning calendar. Each module has a specific lesson duration and has day markers to guide parents and teachers in the asynchronous learning of learners. Inside the modules available in Smart Class, you will find the following elements. First, learning competencies are identified in the module openers. Kickstarters are available to test students' prior knowledge on the subject matter. This set of activities, found at the beginning of each lesson, may also serve as motivational activities. Parents of preschool to grade 2 students will also find notes to parents which contain tips and pointers on how they can guide their child while learning at home. Redefine your students' learning experience with the integration of augmented reality technology into images and illustrations available in Smart Class, making learning more interactive and exciting. At the end of each module, Long Quiz is also available to assess students' understanding of the lesson. Smart Class also features Wrap Up, a lesson ender activity that applies the constructivism theory of learning. In Wrap Up, students are expected to summarize the lesson on their own using a graphic organizer. You may also evaluate the quality of your students' learning by letting them practice their learning in real life through GRASP's formatted performance tasks. The content of Smart Class is designed for the entire academic year, and it is available for 5 major subjects. All aligned with DepEd's K-12 curriculum and covers the most essential learning competencies prescribed by DepEd. Secure your own copy of Smart Class before classes open. Contact marketing@debaugroup.com to know more.
Good afternoon, Kabibal, and welcome to our high school educational webinar series. For the discussion today, the topic will be on developing memory skills through graphic presentation. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vivalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. You may place your questions on the comment box allotted during the session, and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vival webinars. Experience learning, Kabibal. And now, to proceed with our webinar this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker for today. He is a consultant and evaluator of K-12 Philippine Basic Education Curriculum and academic consultant for Sisters of Mary Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brother Roderick M. Aguirre.
Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome again to our opportunity, an opportunity for us to together learn and recall what we have learned during our college days, probably during our post-baccalaureate courses, on how we can help our students improve their memory skills, especially now with the pandemic, that our students will be learning at home. And by this topic, I hope that this will help you teachers and even the parents and even you guys guiding the parents to help the students develop their memory skills, if not enhance their memory skills at home. So let me share my slide first to you. All right. So our topic for this afternoon is about developing and enhancing memory skills through graphic presentations. I know you know a lot of graphic presentations, but I will give more shed light on how it helps improve the memory skills of our students and how it helps maximize the storing, retrieval, and eventually the lifelong learning of our students. So I have a subtitle for the topic for this afternoon, which is more on helping learners to remember and understand their lessons while learning at home. So this will be my outline. So I will have an introduction. So we'll just discuss a little on some of the myths about memory skills and how people view our memory skills. And then we will proceed to discussion, and I will have a little bit of assessment here. And we are going to answer just 3 questions. Although originally when I was preparing my presentation for this afternoon, I had about 5 to 7 questions, but I had to limit it to just the most essential and most practical ways for teachers and parents out there to incorporate in the preparation for the school year of 2020 and 2021. So the questions are, what is memory? We need to understand what our memories are for, and how we remember and how we process information. That will be the second question. What are the memory systems? I'm sorry, this should be what are the memory systems? And then the third and the last question would be how can we improve our memory skills? What strategies and what techniques we can employ to improve our memory skills, and at the same time, because by knowing these techniques and applying it to ourselves, we're able now to guide our students to also choose from these techniques which one works well for them. All right. And then we'll have open forum. I will be entertaining some of your questions and be able to, have at least a one-on-one conversation with those who are asking me questions. And of course, if you have questions along the way, please do not hesitate to um, uh, write in your questions or queries on the comments section. And then we'll have conclusions. Implications are the things that I will suggest and what implications that we can learn from or takeaways you can get from my session. So let us begin. So let's identify some of the myths about memory skills enhancement. So these are some of the myths based on research. One would be some people are stuck with bad memories. Well, this is a myth because it's not some. We are all stuck with bad memories, one way or the other. All of us go through certain situation and experiences that somehow gives us nightmares, if not nightmares, makes us anxious every now and then. But what's different from one person to the other is the level of how we get stuck with it, depending on the emotional attachment to the experience. So some people, all of us are stuck with bad memories, but some are able to move on quickly. Some don't. It depends on how one deal with these experiences. I think people are able to move on with their bad experience and not get stuck with the bad memories. Is that they're able to do reflective strategies and be able to use these opportunities to learn and become a better person. Those who are not able to analyze and do reflections and evaluate their own actions, like at the end of the experience, they get stuck with the bad memory. All right. And I think that's one of the things that we need to teach our students, okay, to move on. And number two is that some people have photographic memories. Well, some people, no. There are only few people who have innate photographic memories, but it can be developed through constant practice, through constant use of the different sensory registers, which I will explain later on, sensory inputs, or sensory memory registers, we will be able to develop our photographic memories. And later on, I will give examples of examples and situations where somehow you had that partial photographic mind, and still you can, knowing that, you can now do something about it to improve it and to use it at your utmost advantage. Next, third myth would be memory benefits from long hours of practice. That is a myth. It is not how long you devote time to doing memory skills development or memorizing concepts. It is more of the quality. It could be a short time period, but you were more the way you memorize or practice the storing of information is more creative, more deductive, or more logical in a way that it makes sense to you. But if it doesn't make sense to you and you just keep on memorizing, definitely will take long hours, and definitely there's a possibility of you after taking a rest, everything may have been forgotten, all right, or discarded, or memory discarded. So not long hours, it is the quality of the practice. Number four, remembering too much can clutter your mind. I think our mind is very powerful, especially our long-term memory. It has unlimited capacity to store information. So that means It's not more of making our minds clutter because our minds can organize this information. It is more of how easy we can access and remember stored information, because we need certain trigger or stimulus to trigger the information. It could be a music, it could be something else. Later on, when I present some strategies to help us easily remember and retrieve information from a long-term memory, would definitely bust this number 4 myth about memory skills. Fifth myth on memory enhancement or memory skills would be we only use 10% of our brain power. There have been a lot of scholars telling us that human beings only use 10% of our brain power. And definitely it depends on one person to another. If we keep continuously engaged in literacy activities, engaged in problem solving activities, and keep on, engaging in issue-based conversations with friends, and we struggle to understand concepts, then we may go beyond 10%, even up to 50%. And we can even, maximize fully our brain capacity and our brain power if we do continuous learning. All right. So 10% is a myth. We can go beyond that. Sixth myth would be memory is a thing. And it's a myth. It's not a thing. It is a process. It's not a product. Memory means we need to understand the process, and by understanding the process of how we remember, how we learn things, we are able to identify which of these processes and how we are having difficulty with, so we will be able to do some troubleshooting. And then remember, since it's a process, it depends from one person to another, depending on a lot of factors contributing to our memory skills. The seventh myth would be there's a secret to a good memory. It's a myth. There's no secret to a good memory. There's not one strategy or technique that can be used by all people in order to help them have a good or better memory than the others. No, it's always practice. All right. So we need to practice because it's something that we need to do. All right. To constantly engage in, so that we enhance our brain capacity. Next would be there's an easy way to memorize. There is no easy way to memorize. It always starts as a difficult task. It starts with something that we struggle with, but the more we do it, then the more we use strategy or technique, in the long run it becomes part of us or becomes part of our habit. Hence it becomes easy. So it does not start easy. It starts really as a struggle. Then eventually, as you constantly use strategy and technique, it becomes an easy way to do. And that should have been 8, 9. My numbering is wrong. So the 9th myth would be you are too old or too young to improve your memory. The age does not give us guarantee of whether we have a capacity to improve our memory. It depends again on our experiences and how we engage in our lifestyle. All right. So it's not necessarily age. It does not mean that the younger you are, the better your memory is, or the older you get, unless you have dementia and other diminishing memory problems, you'll be okay. Learning and brain capacity continues on. In fact, it improves as we get older, and as we use it constantly, we get better at it. All right. A trained memory never forgets. That's myth. All right. It's not just trained. Every individual has learned something, but can never and will never forget it. Will be stored in the long-term memory. Only that, again, as I've said, the retrieval will be difficult because the retrieval will be based on situations that will trigger the retrieval of the information. So a long time information, elementary information that you have forgotten, you have stored in your memory, will be stored and will be put in the recesses of your brain, but will be retrieved to the fore when you say a certain situation in the lesson in college or high school calls for you to recall that. Okay, so we are all individuals have a capacity to uh, acquire information, store information in unlimited capacity. All right. So let us not start. So those are the myths, and then we're going to test all those myths and we're going to bust them as we go through our discussion. So our discussion will be helping us understand how memory system works in order to help our learners enhance theirs. I always believe in the mantra that we cannot give what we do not have. So I always focus more on helping teachers to equip themselves in these strategies, in their techniques. And once they have habituated these techniques and these strategies and made it their own, it is easy for them to teach because it's easy to teach something that you have done and you have mastered yourselves. So let us start by trying this out. So you viewers out there, so this is my new thing for August. So before I start my discussion, I will have a little bit of, testing for you. So I would like you to, after my activity here, I will be asking a question. So please key in your answer to my final question in the comment section. I will find out if how well your memory is. Okay, let us begin. So I would like you to, I'll be showing you equations and I will be asking you whether it's it's correct or not equation, and then I'll be asking you to remember something. All right, and afterwards I will move on to another equation and then up to the sixth equation. All right. So the first equation is this: 10 times 2 minus 3 is equals 17. Is this correct? Yes or no? Then after that, remember letter P. Let's proceed to the second equation. 8 plus 2 minus 1 equals 8. Is this equation correct? Yes or no? Then remember letter Q. Let's proceed to the third equation. 12 divided by 6 minus 2 equals 0. Is this equation correct or incorrect? Yes or no? Remember letter R. Let's proceed to the fourth equation. 2 times 3 plus 5 equals 12. Is this equation correct? Yes or no? Then remember letter A. Let's now proceed to equation number 5. 20 minus 8 plus 3 equals 10. Is this equation correct? Yes or no? Then remember letter T. Let's now proceed to the sixth equation and the last. 40 divided by 10 minus 3 equals 1. Is this equation correct? Yes or no? Then remember letter C. My last question is, what is the correct order from the first equation to the last equation of the letters that you're supposed to remember? Key in your answer in the comment section. So since I'm talking, you're just listening and you're listening and at the same time just answering my questions while I am talking, remembering and processing at the same time. So the answers would have been yes, no, yes. All right. And then the letters would be P, Q, R, A, T, C. All right. I'm able to memorize, to hold on information that much because I was trained really well in elementary and high school by a lot of strategies. One of those would be note taking. So I think during my time, teachers required all students to take down notes, and taking down notes is one of the many graphic representations strategy and technique to help students take down notes. And I remember that what we take down notes would be everything that the teacher discussed, and some of it would be what's written on the blackboard. And we're given only a certain limit of time to actually take some of those notes and give us, time to think about it. We're asked to close our eyes and then be able to remember what we wrote. So key in your answer to the comment section. So let's find out if you have really good memories, working memories. So let's now proceed to our discussion with question number one. What is memory? So let's have a common definition of memory. All right. Psychologists define memory as our ability to encode, to store, to retain, and subsequently recall information and past experiences in the human brain. It can be thought of in general terms as the use of past experiences to affect or influence current behavior. With that definition, we'll now be able to graphically present this definition. So memory is our ability to encode information, decode information, to understand it and get meaning from it, store information if it's relevant, and we have high interest to it, and then be able to retain it so that we can use it and retrieve it in the future whenever we need it. But there are many factors that contribute contribute to our memories, or the level of efficiency and effectiveness of the use of our memory skills. One of which would be our genes. All right, so we genetically, if our genetic codes predisposes us to have really good memory skills, and that would somehow determine and influence and our ability to remember and to learn things quickly. All right, but it doesn't mean that it's the one and all determining factor of our capability to utilize our memories. It basically around 10-15% only of genes would be a factor and influence to our memories. Still, there will be nurture. Okay, that will be nature, and we'll still have other nurture factors that influence. One would be lifestyle, the nutrition that we have, exercise, the sleep, and so on and so forth. So these are the things. Lifestyle, which is part of the environment and how we are reared, contribute greatly and how our memories, our brains develop so much, and we are efficiently able to use our mental capacities and our memory skills. If we have a lot of activities at home and at school that forces and requires us to engage in thinking, even if it hurts, then one way or the other, we are without us knowing it, our brains and our memory skills are well enhanced. So that would be lifestyle. So you have our schedule, our routine, the food that we eat, the time of sleep. Enough? Do we have enough time of sleep? Do we do exercise? So lifestyle will be the totality of how we live life on a daily basis. Next week, motivation would be intrinsic first. There are two types of motivation that contribute to our memory capacity. We have the internal motivation. The internal motivation would be mostly on your interest. Okay, the interest. If you don't like the subject, you're not interested in the subject. There's a high likely, you're highly likely to not remember things and easily forget the concepts. Like when I was in elementary, I was not so interested with mathematics. It was difficult for me to learn it. I was, not just mathematics, but mathematics and Filipino. Those were the subjects that I didn't see any relevance in my life. So my intrinsic motivation to listen to it or study it, or remember the things my teachers were teaching us, were really low because my motivation to it. But eventually, as I progressed from my other grade levels and I met other teachers, my intrinsic motivation increased greatly, because the extrinsic motivation, the teacher's way of delivering the subject, somehow influenced my intrinsic motivation to like the subject. So when I was in grade 4, my math teacher was really, I think, Ma'am Prudente. Okay, Ma'am Prudente was really good, Filipino teacher, and she has a way of making concepts easy to understand in Filipino, and her voice was so loud with a good listening volume, and made us pay attention to what she was saying. So the extrinsic motivation somehow influenced my intrinsic motivation. And I think that's one of the many things that teachers had to do something about. If there's a low intrinsic motivation for students to learn a subject, their memory capacities will be low too. Hence, there will be more teacher extrinsic motivation to influence the students. So the lower the interest of the student to a subject, the higher the extrinsic or effort of the teacher in delivering the child should be. All right, the more creative it should be. Of course, there's another one would be the need, perhaps based on need to belong to certain groups, peer groups. If the peer groups are really, excelling well at school, the circles of friends that the students are with are high achieving students, somehow it influences them to become such. But if their circle of friends are those, just mediocre, who's just, just getting by, I think they're also their capacity to they use their memory skills would also be low. So it would be nice for teachers and parents to make sure that they do a little bit of manipulation of the kids and the students friends. All right, so to influence also how they're supposed to choose friends. All right, remember, you cannot choose your family, you can always choose your friends. So choose wisely. So these are some. There are other factors that would contribute to the memory, our memory capacity and our memory processes. But these are the four things that I would like to focus on to this topic today. All right. Of course, excluding genetic. So we'll focus on lifestyle motivation and needs. Right. So let's now have the second question. What are different memory skills? All right. So for us, there are about 7 memory skills. There is what we call as retrieval. So our capacity to retrieve information stored in long-term memory. So let's bring it back from a long-term memory. So one of the many skills of memory is teachers is to be able to retrieve those information. A good way to do that is before starting a new lesson, there should be probably a review of the past lesson. That's why a review is very important to help students string the information and retrieve information constantly. I think it was easy. We were during my elementary and high school days, on the old curriculum days and the old technique, but it worked well for us. We were constantly learning to retrieve information because some of our teachers were giving us quizzes every day and recitation, graded recitation. And through these activities, we are able to, we are forced to study every night, which, helps us retrieve information of what was discussed that day, the whole day. And then the next day, because we are preparing for the quizzes, we're able to retrieve information because we were forced to take quizzes and partake with the grade presentation. If you do not retrieve information that quick, you'll definitely stand in front of the class. All right. I'm not saying that that's a good strategy right now, especially at home, but I'm trying to just suggest to the teachers that when you create your online materials and your modules and in your modular materials of your materials from modular instruction, have a good way of helping students retrieve and string information in the past. Learn in the past, it could be the past unit or it could be past grade levels, so that one way or the other, we are enhancing our students' memory skills on retrieval. Next would be elaboration. Okay, elaboration means connecting ideas to what you already know. So our students are able to explain in their own words. That's why it's very important for ours for during we have a lot of student discussions, all right, and collaborative effort. So the students, when they talk amongst each other, they're able to elaborate on concepts and thereby sharing their concepts. And if they have misconceptions of this concept, some of their classmates would be able to help them elaborate on the misconceptions. So it is a huge challenge right now for our teachers to help our students to talk about. That's why in my previous webinars, I've been encouraging teachers to create collaborative, small group collaborative platforms where you group the students every quarter so that they will, discuss amongst other. One way to enhance their memory through elaboration is giving them guide questions, if not guide questions, pictures that they can that is relevant to the topic discussed or will be discussed, and they talk about it. If you ask students to read lots of information, there's a possibility of just developing retrieval, and since it's highly independent, they're just reading on their own or learning on their own. Elaboration is not taken care of. So it is very important that in our creation of activities for online learning and then for modular instruction, we have opportunity for our students to talk. If not to talk with other, especially for families who do not have access to digital technology and internet connection, you may want your parent, you may want to the help of the parents by letting them ask the questions to their children and then let them talk about it. All right. And of course, there will be guide answers for guide pre-made, okay, pre-made guide answers provided by the teachers to the parents, so that at least parents would know how to help their students modify and improve their elaborations. Talking is very important. Okay, making connections of their past ideas and now ideas. It's not enough information. They need to constantly talk about it. All right. The more they talk about it, the better it is for them that they store and remember the information and they learn. Interleaving, okay, is one of the many important memory skills. Means varying subjects to focus on. We need, it is as one of the myths, okay? The longer hours we devote studying a particular subject area, the more we understand it. No, it's sometimes 15 to 30 minutes would be enough, but it would definitely helping students focus on the subject area, making certain schedules for students to learn the subject and at the same time study the subject would help them, but helping them focus on just one subject at a time would help them deal with concepts that they're struggling with. So interleaving means helping our students schedule what they need to focus on. So I've already talked about this based on positive discipline through home scheduling is a one way of helping our students do interleaving by coming up with, a graphic calendar or a schedule that would constantly remind him of what they're supposed to be doing at this particular hour of day. All right, so that's one skill. So schedule and routine is one way. Okay, a graphical schedule, a schedule that is graphically represented to students would greatly improve their interleaving memory skills. Next would be the fourth would be generation. Okay, generation means answering before you have an answer. That means it's helping our students to actually formulate questions in advance. Okay, formulate questions in advance of things that they will learn from this topic. That's why it's very important that teachers provide our students with the syllabus or at least the outline of the topics that will, if not topics, the list of learning competences in sequence that they will be learning this in particular week or this particular month or this particular quarter, so that students are able to go through with it and their minds are able to project what they will be learning from it. All right. And another way of doing that is by generation is by asking students questions and let them explain. Now that can be done through, say, live online classes where teachers individually ask students certain questions, but the teacher will withhold the answer of the question. So it is not that if we have 40 or 25 students who will create 25 questions, we can have just 2 to 3 questions, and then ask all our students. All we have to do is allow our students to give their answers and withholding our answers or labeling our students' answers as yes or no. The point there is that our students are able to talk, like in elaboration, is being able to talk about the answers to the questions that we ask. It can be done, say, orally. It can also be done in modular approach, where at the end of a lesson or before the lesson, you have pre-questions or post-questions that they will answer, and the answers they will write down on a piece of paper that will be submitted to the teachers. But then again, the checking and the evaluation of answers of individual teachers in written form would be too tasking for our teachers, especially that they will be still preparing a lot of materials for the succeeding online or modular instruction. Okay, so generation is one of those memory skills that we need to develop among our students. Next will be reflection. This is one of the neglected memory skills. Reflection is helping our students reflect on what they are struggling about, what subjects do they struggle, and somehow allow them to pinpoint the actual reason why they struggle on a certain lesson of a subject or of a certain subject. So one Harvard University came up with a good study of their students, that requiring students to do reflective journal or writing their reflections at the end of the day, just about 15 minutes, devoting 15 minutes with guide questions on what they have learned, summarizing what they have learned, and then what they have struggled on that day, and then what would be their action to address the struggles that they encountered that day. So just the 3 questions would help our students reflect on, because it's helping our students evaluate their strengths and weaknesses in terms of what's working for them and what's not working for them that day. Now, it does not necessarily have to be, let's say, daily, but I would suggest that at least 2 to 3 times a week. 1 week reflective journal writing, for especially for elementary and high school students, would be difficult for them to recall what has been done, what he went through in day 1, day 2, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Most likely they will only remember what happened in the day before and the last day, or that day that they're trying to reflect on. So I would suggest 2 to 3 days. Not necessarily have to be all subjects though, but it could be just a reflective journal that is required of them to summarize what they have learned that day or for the 2 days, and then asking them to write what they have struggled on, and then definitely what will be their action. So this will be submitted to the teacher, and the teacher now will have certain actual data, qualitative data that he or she can peruse over, and will be basis for him or her to improve materials preparation for the next quarter. That could be good. All right. So, but nonetheless, even if you check it, if you don't check it, it will still help our students develop their reflection skills, as memory skills on reflecting. Next will be mnemonics. I think you've heard about this, and you've been doing a lot of mnemonics strategies. So, which I will be using later on too, is helping our students hacks to recall information. The use of mnemonic devices like acronyms, acrostics, graphic organizers, are really good techniques for our students to recall information easily. And it is not acquired. It has to be explicitly integrated in our material. Especially, say, before we start a lesson, we could show them a graphic organizer that summarizes, that gives them a general overview of the lesson for that day. And at the end of the lesson, you will present the same graphic organizer, but the graphic organizer will have missing information. And now they're going to do note taking, and using the graphic organizer, they will fill in those information, which will require them now to retrieve information that they have just heard or listened to from the discussion. Very, very good. All right. Next would be calibration. Definitely evaluation through testing is a good way for our students to calibrate what they know and what they have not learned. So it is part giving students tests is a one way of helping our students calibrate what they know and what they do not know. But what's important here is not just giving them, okay, not just giving them um, the score, their score, the raw score over the total number of correct answers. That's not enough. You need to give them review through the tests. All right. So you have to go through like question number one. The answer is why it should be the right answer. We call this as item analysis activity, where we ask our students, or item elimination, where we ask our students to review what they have quite learned and what they have not learned through the test we have given them. All right. And most of the practices that we give to our students is just they take tests, and after the test, they know their scores, and that's it. That's not enough. You're not teaching them calibration. You're only asking them to focus more on scores, but not understanding their actual performance. So calibration is through testing, is actually doing item analysis. All right, with the students, not just teachers doing it just to submit it to the school authorities as one of their requirements. Okay. Now, how are we going to develop all of this? Let's proceed to our third question. How can we improve our memory skills? All of the 7 skills there. So, for us to understand how we develop our memory skills, let us understand it and how we actually process information. All right. So we have 3 memory systems. All right. We have the sensory register, we have the short-term memory, and we have the long-term memory. Before any information in any form, for that matter, proceeds to short-term memory and is being processed in the short-term memory, it has to go through the sensory memory. Therefore, we need techniques to help our students enhance their sensory memory systems. And then once that is enhanced, then we proceed to helping our students, providing them with techniques to help them process information in the short-term memory, and what other techniques that would help them store information in the long-term memory. So I think most of us have been aware that we have short-term memory and we have a long-term memory, but actually in educational psychology, we've learned that there are 3 memory systems, and these are stages that information go through in our minds. So what happens is that we assimilate information or sensory inputs from the environment or from our surroundings and passes through our sensory memory. Our sensory memory basically would be our different senses. You have the 5 senses. So let's just focus on the 2 most prevailing sensory memories. We have the visual sensory using our sight, of course, and then we have our auditory sensory using our ears. So the visual sensory, also known as the iconic memory, would be via the pictures, or also known now as the viewing skills that we have. But in terms of retention, it only stays in our memory system for milliseconds, not even a second. It is millisecond. All right. So it is very important for us that we are going to show our students pictures. The simpler it is for them to retain it, it would be better. If we provide them with pictures or visual aids that are so complicated with too many elements to process, then it defeats the purpose for them to focus on the iconic, the icon or the iconic. So give them visual materials, okay, simple, gradually, one at a time, like what I'm doing with you right now. This one is simply giving them to you, like, instead of giving you the whole picture, I will give you simple pictures for the brain to focus on just one. Because again, remember, the picture or the icon stays with the memory system, with the sensory memory system, millisecond. All right, there you go. So one at a time. So when we create online materials, it's very important for us to gradually present visual information to our students, coupled, of course, with auditory information. All right. If we combine together the visual sensory input and the auditory sensory input, the more students will be able to retain information we want them to focus on in their sensory memory. All right. and thereby helping them focus on those information. Okay. Now, if our visual sensory input and our auditory sensory input do not match, a lot of times that what the teachers are doing is that what they say does not represent, or what they show to the student does not represent their explanation. Some of those though, especially if say the teacher is explaining, but everything that the students are seeing in the PowerPoint presentation or their online material or in their modular approach, let's say they have the module and they're listening to it via an audio, um, what happens there is what they see are words. Then students, there's no matching of what am I supposed to do here. Should I be listening or should I be reading? So they do not complement. But with graphical presentations and the audio or auditory sensory input would complement the visual representation, then students are able to focus more on what they're supposed to be learning. Now, if there is a dissonance or a disagreement between the auditory sensory input and the visual sensory input, some students, attention happens and then that information will be processed in the short-term memory. But if there's a discrepancy between the auditory sensory input and visual sensory input, students say, I don't want to listen to the teacher, I would rather read the book, or I would rather listen to the teacher than read the book. So there's no complementary of using of the two the two sensory inputs, then the information will be discarded. The sensory memory definitely we just discard. So some of the students be pretending to be paying attention, but their minds have already drifted away. Or at home, students will be pretending to be reading, like doing this, but their minds already thinking of something else. But if the visual sensory and the auditory sensory inputs complement, it requires the students to pay attention to what they're supposed to be learning that day, and it will move on. Oh, by the way, the auditory sensory input stays to 3 to 4 seconds. If visual sensory input stays milliseconds in our sensory memory system, the auditory sensory, which the voice and then the explanation of the teacher, stays with our memory sensory 3 to 4 seconds. Right? So if it complements together, there's a possibility that will be retained enough about 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry, 45 seconds for students to pay attention to it and actually start, thinking about it and learning about it. Learning and the processing actually happens in the short-term memory. Okay, there. That's why it's called the memory. It's called the working memory. All right. So let's have an example. Say our student is learning at home. Okay, the child is trying to focus on, let's say they're now already on the second week, because usually what happens in this school year, the first week we did try out, giving out rules and regulations, briefing the students what will happen, and helping students, get the hang of the routine of the modular learning. And we have a lot of sensory inputs that the students will be assimilating at home. One of which would be, say, some of the family members downstairs or in the other room, or if the child is just in the dining area, and adjacent to the dining area would be the sala area, or the living area. And then some of the members of the family, like the uncle or the grandfather or the mother or father, is watching television over the news. Then the student has two information or two sensory input: the modular material that she's trying to read, and is listening to an information from the television that does not really complement what he or she is reading. Do you think the child will be able to focus? No, definitely not. Therefore, there's a possibility that the child will be discarded by the sensory memory. It will not even go through the working memory. It will not even merit for the information to be processed in the working memory system. Not just that, not just the noise coming from the television or visual input coming from the television, but also probably if the student has a younger brother or younger sister and they're playing and all of a sudden they start fighting, the crying and the fight would definitely defocus what your students are doing at home. Not just that, if you have pets at home, if our students have pets at home, like a dog running after a cat, and the cat is running after a mouse or a rat, definitely, and especially if the child loves so much pets, I tell you, he or she will stop what he or she's doing and then run after the dogs or run after the pets and start playing with the pets. Not just that. What if it's already like around 11 o'clock or say 5 o'clock? Uh, the parents will be, or the yaya or whoever is assigned to do the cooking will be starting cooking. And then our student will be assimilated not just with the sounds of the utensils being used and in the preparation of the food, but also will be assailed by the olfactory senses of the smell of the food being prepared. So these are our distractions. So how do we help our students improve their sensory memory system or register? Simply help students focus. Here are my suggestions how we can do that. All right. Practical ways at home to help students focus on what they are learning. Number one, find a suitable location in the house. I already have a session on this during Learn at Home session. So those who are viewing right now, we want to review my sessions in the first week of July, and I already have a session on finding your location at home. That would help you. I will not elaborate. That's one of the suggestions I can give you. All right. Next would be establish a routine. So the routine here is coming up with a graphical presentation of your schedule. As I've said, use some icons. If it's online, you can use a picture of a computer. If it's modular for that day or activity sheet, use a paper that would an icon that would signal to your students that it's that type of activity they're going to engage in. So I already have a session on this. I call this as developing positive discipline through home scheduling. So you may want to again review my session on this on the first week. These two suggestions I'm giving you right now, I already thoroughly discussed this in the first week of July. The third suggestion I can give is block. All right, block distractions. So I am suggesting that the parents, with the help of the parents, knowing that these are the time that the students are supposed to be focusing on learning, they may want to sacrifice some of their leisures in life. If our students are supposed to be studying at say 10 to 11, 8 to 11 o'clock in the morning, and then we're supposed to be watching something on television, we may want to forgo, unless our students are in a different room on in the second floor or a third floor, where definitely will not be able to listen to the noise of the television. Then you can do that. But if your house is too small, do not have enough barriers to block away those distractions, then you may want, I'm sorry parents, but that's how we can help our children focus on what they're supposed to be learning. Then they will not be learning. They're still on the focusing of information or of the stimulus in the working memory. Hindi pa sila natututo, hindi pa sila nag-iisip dahil nandun pa lang sila sa pag-assimilate, pagbibigay ng focus. Kung dun pa lang, they already have distractions. Do you think they will be learning? They will not. So block distractions, no cell phones, be strict with that. If they're doing modular instruction, no cell phones. Now, there are other learners who are able to focus if there's a sound, there's music to it, then you may allow them. But again, remember, you have to ask students which works and doesn't work for them. So my fourth suggestion is provide your students with the best tools. So these are the things that I've researched, that I have been using in the past few years. Although this is quite new, there have been improvement of these applications and online applications that you can download to the cell phones of your students or cell phones of your parents. One is a tool, a graphic presentation or graphic application for students to organize their schedule, academic schedule. One would be school track. That's SCHOOLTRAQ. School track can be downloaded so that it can be linked to the Facebook of the child or the Google or even to the Windows link to the tablet or PC that your kids are using, and then it would automatically signal to them the schedule. So teachers may want to explore this application and sync it with their students or sync it also with the parents' schedule for the organization of the schedule, daily, weekly, and so on and so forth. Next application that you can explore would be a graphic application that would help students to focus music. These are music that have been researched thoroughly by our educational psychologists and clinical psychologists to be really effective on the learning process of students. So these are music that facilitate brain functions. Okay, you may want to focus on now. If kids are not comfortable with the music, then you may want not just to include this in the list. Another one would be a graphic application that would help students build habits, like knowing that they're supposed to be doing things like this, like cooking, sewing. It's really good for skill-based subject area. So you can put it in the Habitica application, and then eventually kids, the application will get gamify the habit or the skill, and then instead just students are engaging in the games of Mobile Legends and other online games. Habitica would gamify the skills. So it's like they're playing game, but at the same time they are learning the skills. All right. So the fifth suggestion that I can give would be let students focus more on skills and not just knowledge. So try to limit the information you want to provide to the students, and so that they can focus more on the skills or the application of this knowledge to a particular set of skills that they're supposed to acquire. So give more emphasis on the acquisition of the skills, not just on the knowledge per se, because knowledge are used for our students to use in acquiring certain sets of skills. All right. And then finally, my sixth suggestion would be provide avenue for giving two-way feedback. It is very important for our students to listen to the teacher, as to what ways they can be helped to improve their memory skills. On the other hand, it's also a good way for teachers to listen to their students, what things they're having difficulty with, so that this will be information for the teachers to do something about when they prepare materials. So I'm suggesting teachers out there, do not finish your materials for the whole quarter. Start probably with 2 weeks, and then listen to the feedback of the students and their try out of the materials in the first week, so that you can do something about the modification of how you develop the materials on the third week. I highly suggest that less prose form of information, the more graphic it is, like what I'm doing right now, the more graphic it is, the better if it's for students to learn, because there's a possibility of information overload for the students. We call it as brain constipation. That some of the information will be discarded because they do no longer see some of the information to be relevant. Okay, so as our job as teachers is to extract essential information that is needed for students to pay attention to. All other information that you think is not important for students to pay attention to, do not include in your graphical presentation, in your PowerPoint presentation, or your online material, or in your modular materials, right? Or in your modules, right? So let's now proceed to helping our students process information. So let's review what we just did. That our students are getting information input from the environment, and most of the information, the most prevalent information that they will get and process in the sensory memory would be the visual and auditory sensory inputs. The more ways we can help our students pay attention to this information, it will be easier for them to try to understand it, okay? And by understanding it, processing it, we call it as maintenance rehearsals. Now, if we do not, if our students are helped in processing the information they paid attention to through maintenance rehearsal or techniques, it will be easy for them to encode and store it in their long-term memory. But if our materials and our online and modular materials do not have enough maintenance rehearsal techniques, basically this information will be discarded. So here are my suggestions you can do, which I have already incorporated in my personality. This is the things I've been doing in the past years as a person and learning things. And there's a possibility why you know, it's easy for me to learn a lot of things. So these are the things that we can wait. So we'll talk about that here on the long-term memory. Okay. So we have the chunking memory technique. George Miller is a well-known psychologist, came up with a technique of chunking, and because of his research, he came up that the digital capacity of every human being, the digital capacity of the human brain, is about 5 to 9 digits. Okay, 5 to 9 digits or 5 to 9 concepts, with the principle of 7 minus 2 or 7 less 2. So we have a maximum, a minimum of 5 to a maximum of 9 with an average of 7. So when we come up with elements, say a slide, we need to make sure that the concepts and words that we present there should not exceed 9. Okay, should not exceed 9 in terms of chunking. All right. So we can still present a lot of information, but we need to help our students chunk information. It could be a definition of terms that I gave you a while ago, but I gave a highlight on those 9 concepts that we need to pay attention to. So it provides our students a way to focus on what information they need to work on, right? So just to give you a description of chunking memory technique, it is a technique which can improve our memories. Chunking take individual pieces of information, chunks, and grouping them into larger units. So instead of asking our students to individually understand information, we will help them to organize their information in such a way that no matter how bulky the information is, we will have a way of easily storing it and a way of organizing it so easily stored and easily retrieved. Okay. So the technique happens in 3 steps. I think there are 4. Yeah, there are 4. 1, break down larger amounts of information to smaller units. Identify similarities or patterns. Organize the information in such a way that it, easy to remember. And then group information into manageable units. Let's have an example. So example, we have, say, this 11 digits. Okay, we cannot memorize 09178567149. It would be difficult for students to individually memorize these digits because it exceeds the 9 capacity of our brain. A 9-digit capacity of our brain, it's 11. So what happens to our brain is that we organize it into, say, 09 in pairs. So 09, 17, 85, 67, 14, 9. So instead of 091, something like that, and 9. So we somehow, instead of having 11 different concepts to 11, we have chunked it into 1, 2, 3, 4, just 5. Chunks of information or digits. So 09, 17, 85, 67, 49. Now, it can even be reduced into just 3, like how we remember our telephone number, 0917 856 8567 149. So the classroom would be memorize the 4 digits as 1, and then 8567 as another one set, then the last 4 digits as 1 set. So that's how we're supposed to be teaching our students. So if you're preparing materials for our students, it is very important that if you, in modular approach, you put an underline to the important information in say things that they're reading. So highlighting, like making it bold or giving a different color or putting underlining important concepts, that would help our students focus on this information, thereby helping them retain this information and work on this information in the learning process. All right. Let's have another example. We have A, B, C, C, N, N, H, B, O, X, Y, Z. That would be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 letters, 12 individual letters to memorize. But we can do the process of, or the technique of chunking to help our students practice memorizing concepts by looking at, say, 4 clusters or 4 chunks. We have A, B, C, C and N, H, B, O, X, Y, Z, and teach them associations like the first chunk would be letters, the second chunk would be news, second chunk would be movies. So then we have letters. I would say A, B, C. So the next would be news, C and N. The next would be movies, H, B, O, and the last one would be letters, X, Y, Z. All right, so here we combine chunking and association at the same time. All right, so letters, news, movies, then letters. So letters you have A, B, C, and then news you have C and N, movies you have H, B, O, and then letters X, Y, Z. Easy. All right, so this is the idea of chunking. So these are some of the strategies of doing chunking. Like this is a definition of terms, okay? There's a definition in terms of instead of students memorizing waves of washing the shore of volumes of water, we can use acrostics instead. So we can say washing ashore, volumes of water, ebb and flow on sandy beaches. Not sandy beaches, sandy beaches. So we have waves, so we can, arrange the important words, keywords in the definite terms and make acrostics out of it. So this one would be easier. There are about only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chunks of information for students to memorize or work on instead of how many words? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 words beyond what we call as the capacity of the brain to about 9 concepts. Let's have another example. So this is our description from science. There are 7 hues that make up the spectrum of colors in the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So it's difficult for our students. They will have difficulty memorizing this statement. There would be about how many words to individual words to memorize. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's too much. Okay, 22 words. So how we can help our students do that? We can use the strategy or the technique of acronymy or the use of acronyms. So we have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, making up the acronym Roy GB. All right, Roy GB. So instead of that, okay, so when we say spectrum colors, we say Roy GB. There you go. It's easier for students to memorize. Now, another way of doing that, which I did not include in my slides, would be they can still memorize this definition by putting this, replacing it in the lyrics of the song. So it's easier for us. Kids would be easier. We call it as the technique of association through music. So students can replace the definition of words of this definition to a particular song that they remember most, and that will be good. That's why we remember a lot of like how many days are there in a month, or how many days are there in the months. So because we know a poem about it, so we memorize the poem. All right, so acronyms or associations for music and poems would be a nice way of helping our students graphically represent concepts and easy for them to store. All right. Another one would be chunky information from long articles, and we have also from a unit book. This is what we call as the graphic organizers. The graphic organizer will be based depending on how the information was presented, which I will present tomorrow morning on the rhetorical patterns, which are other different types of graphic organizers I will present tomorrow on my session on comprehending informational text and across subject areas in the evening. So I'm just presenting one, which I call it, this is what we call as a flow chart. It's kind of a horizontal flow chart where the unit title and the topic that's I've always been suggesting this to module developers that before you start the lesson, say a discussion in the module or in an online material, you give them an overview of the information that they will be listening to, giving them this kind of graphical presentation of what they're supposed to understand that day would help their minds help their minds prepare for what they're supposed to be focusing on. So this one will be good. So you will have here all the information. Of course, I did not key in some information, so key in the information here. And then at the end of the lesson, you may want to practice note taking. You may want to leave the title and the topics uh, uh, on, but the rest, like the concepts and the items, will be blank so that they will now, based on what they have retained and recalled, so practice and recall, they now write in their answers. And afterwards, giving them probably like 3 to 5 minutes to finish that. And afterwards, elaboration and generation retention by asking them to talk about it, talk among each other. Like, okay, you now go to your, you now log into your group chats and then explain to each other. So take turns in explaining the graphic organizer that you have accomplished. So not just writing about it, but helping them to talk about and share the ideas would also help them develop the other memory skills like generation, reflection. Also, we have interleaving, because focusing on a lesson that they're supposed to focus on. And of course, elaborating is very important. Retrieval would be there. In fact, doing this kind of strategy through graphic organizer before and after each lesson and letting them talk about what they have accomplished is as actually a total package in helping our students develop the 7 memory skills. So you don't have to let them, necessarily have to summarize written summary, but orally summarizing it, because with other people, they have an opportunity to clear out their ideas. Okay, so just to summarize my topics on this, working memory is one of the executive functions where individuals are able to hold information in memory while performing complex tasks. It incorporates the ability to draw on past learning experience applied to the situation at hand or to the project in the future. So being one of the many executive functions that every individual should have acquired, it should start at a very young age. So teaching our students or helping our students different techniques in graphic representation techniques to enhance memory skills of our students should start at a very young age. Sometimes it is difficult to help our students incorporate certain strategies when when their minds are no longer pliant to such strategies and techniques. But for as long as they're still at school and they're still in the learning process, we may want to let them try out certain techniques. My suggestion again is that do not choose techniques and change the techniques every day. Stay with the technique probably a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks until such time that you think students have already incorporated the technique as part of their individual learning styles or learning strategy or technique. And then once you see that they're already, say, doing note taking, doing graphic organizers, you move on to another technique. You do not have a technique that in your materials and your presentation, every day you change a different technique. Say KWL as a graphic representation strategy for comprehension. Stay with it until such time your students have acquired and incorporated and are habituated that technique and strategy for themselves. All right. So our graphical representation would somehow define this, help our students working memory, help kids hold on to information long enough to use it. So it helps in the retention of the information. Working memory plays an important role in concentration and follow instructions. So by asking our students to listen to instructions, I remember some of the things that I do for our students, our students at Sister Samir. I had some sessions on asking them to look for partners, and then after that, I let them choose which one who will be the speaker and the one who will be listener, speaker and listener activity. So though once they have chosen who the listener is, the listener will have to face the back. They have to turn their chairs and face the back, while those who are going to be speakers will have to face me, and I will give them 1 minute. I'll show them a picture, sets of shapes, and I will show them the sets of shapes, and I will ask them to keep quiet, to just look at it. Remember to look at it, iconic memory. Look at it for 1 minute. All right. And then after 1 minute, I ask them to close their eyes, close their eyes, and then mentally talk them to themselves how to describe the sets of shapes. And then afterwards, after 1 minute again, I ask them to explain the icon or the picture that they saw, and ask their listener partner to draw the sets of shapes. That's a good activity to help enhance the memories of students. Then and afterwards, once done, they exchange roles. The other one will be the speaker, the other one will be the listener. A really good activity for uh, enhancing the memory skills of our students. What's important, what I'm telling here is that teaching of memory skills should be explicit. It's not just hoping that the students will develop the memory skills. No, it has to be explicitly integrated in our planning of online materials and our graphic and our modular and our modules. And finally, weak working memory skills can affect learning in many different subject areas, including reading and reading math. So students who have problems, who have not acquired sufficient use of their memory skills, will definitely have problems learning and comprehending concepts across subject areas. That's why I really love this topic to be my first topic this week, since my topics, the succeeding topics, will be on comprehending. So this one will be my jump starter for my topic tomorrow on teaching comprehending informational text, and in the evening I will have teaching comprehension across subject areas. All right, so graphical presentations through acronyms, through graphic schedules, through graphic applications, not just verbally reminding our students. Consistency of oral input and visual input is one of those things that would help our students focus on information. With that, these are the only information I can provide you with, although there are a lot of things I would like to provide you with about memory skills, but definitely you can research on it. There are a lot of researches by Columbia University, Harvard, even University of the Philippines, in Philippine Normal University, and other universities in the Philippines have a lot of extensive and intensive researches on developing memory skills among our students in the Philippines. You may want to Google them or research them on Google and read in advance. So for the meantime, these are the information that will provide you with, given the time that I have. And with this, I'm now ready to entertain questions. So ready 3:20. Yes, Mitch, do I have questions?
Yes po, Brother Ricky. So for our first question po, from Miss Christina Mendez. Are students po who are poor in memorization are also slow learners?
Well, those students who have poor memory skills will definitely be one of those students who will be slow. But there are many reasons why our students are slow. It could be have visual impairment, they have auditory impairments, all other impairments and disabilities would contribute to being a slow learner. But yes, if our students have poor memory skills, well, definitely they will be categorized under learning disability. Okay, students with learning disability. So our students will have to be given corrective and remedial programs or activities. But again, as I've said, helping our students develop memory skills is not only the responsibility of the high school students. In fact, in high school, you are now doing more of memory skills enhancement and transfer, meaning that memory skills have been thoroughly, explicitly taught in the early grades to the middle grades and has been thoroughly incorporated in the students' learning styles. And thereby, in high school, our students will now be, our teachers will now have an easy way of helping students transfer their these memory skills to other subject areas. But um, research shows that the memory skills are the most poorly and mostly neglected techniques in techniques by teachers in the early grades. Most of the early grade teachers, according to research, not just my own opinion, research again, research by George Mills, came out with the results that most our students have poor memory skills because teachers assume that students already know these techniques, that eventually students will learn that making graphic organizers, making an outline, doing note taking would be something natural for students to acquire. It's not naturally acquired. It has to be explicitly taught to the students as say one of the requirements. That's why in the Sisters of Mary, note taking is a requirement. Grade recitation for elaboration should be explaining concepts, summarizing concepts through using graphic organizers would be one of those things that would best help our students in the early grades develop memory skills. So my answer to your question would be yes, it definitely contribute to our students become slow learners because they will be struggling so much in understanding and processing information that they are learning at the hour. All right. So I think it's high time for teachers in the elementary to incorporate the things, some of the strategies and techniques that I have given in their module, especially right now at home. The more, the more there's a more, the higher there's a high need for teachers to incorporate these memory skills techniques in their modules and their online materials because students will be learning on their own at home. If we do not give explicit attention to incorporating these techniques, memory skills techniques in our modules, there would be 1 year that students have not, somehow developed and enhanced their memory skills. And then the next year, if it's still home quarantine, and it gets worse. And then once they get back to the school, they may know they may have traversed over subject areas, but they have forgotten all of those. So it becomes again a very difficult problem for teachers who will be receiving students coming from the lower grade levels, not lower grades, lower grade levels. Thank you very much for the question.
Next po is from Miss Lourdes David. Is
Yes.
it true that when our age increases, our information retention decreases?
No, no, no. That's one of the myths already. Um, as we grow older, if we have not the age per se, but it's the way we engaged in every day, the kind of responsibilities and activities that we partake every day would help improve our memory skills. But if, say, an individual, say a teacher, keeps on teaching the same subject every year until she retires. There's a possible, and she did not include other tasks like did not join the church, did not join other organizations, did not obtain trainings. There's a possibility that the teacher will stagnate, and the possibility of the level of processing and and mental skills capacity would be the same as how she started in her teaching career. That's why in the PPST, the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers, attending trainings and improving one's professional skills is one of the requirement, so that it would help our students, our teachers, I mean, the field, improve their memory skills as they go along. It's not the age, it's how we engaged in activities new. The more new activities we incorporate in our responsibilities every year, the more we improve our mental capabilities, our memory skills. That's how my answer.
Thank you po, Brother Ricky. Next question po from Miss Lenny
Lenny
Icefield.
Robredo?
Yan po. How are we going to encourage learners to focus and retain on their memory on what they are doing if they don't have suitable and study or workspace in their home?
Well, definitely if they do not have a suitable workplace at home or a study place at home, that is a huge struggle for our students, because um, the kind of focus that they have at school is controlled by the preparation of the teacher and the environment of the school. Now, if the approximation of that environment at the school, like the environment of the school, to paying attention to the lesson is not approximated at home by, low assigning a certain place at home, would be difficult for our students to do. Hence, if they cannot focus on what they're doing, definitely there's a possibility of learning not taking place. So it's really important for us to talk to the parents to definitely allocate the place, okay, at home. And the ones that I'm suggesting that let the other members of the family, forsake some of their pleasures. If they think they can, forsake their pleasures for Monday to Friday, and then on Saturday and Friday would be, prolifically doing what they were deprived of doing Monday to Friday, in to give way to the learning of their children at home, then they have to do it. This is the only way we can maximize the learning and focusing of our students, the learning process at home. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do. Teachers are absent at home. If we cannot make our parents our partners in helping our students focus on what they're supposed to learn every day, then we will have 1 year, while we will have one school year in our school calendar that has been defeated, and I would assume that students would not learn anything if we don't do that. I know that a lot of families in the Philippines, especially in the far-flung areas, only have one place, but assigning one table, perhaps, if not a table, a chair, if not a chair, just a corner where the students will have a pillow or probably a carton where would signify that if he or she sits down on that corner, that's definitely where he's supposed to learn, like looking at the corner, facing the corner, and so on and so forth. I don't know how we're going to do that, if especially if there will be other tools could support the giving focus, like an earpiece to blur the sounds from the environment. But again, if they're too poor to buy earpieces, definitely they don't have this gadget at home, then that's a huge challenge for them. So assigning a place at home, just a corner, would do the trick, and then all the rest of the members of the family, pretending that they're also learning. So forsaking their pleasures for just for 5 days, and then prolifically doing all those things that they have been deprived of for 5 days in the school days of their children. They do that for the Saturday and Sunday. That's the only way we can help our learners. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. Thank you.
Okay po. Last question po from Ma'am Leia Gorgonio. How can I help my grade 3 brother to focus on his studies when he prefer to play games in his smartphone instead of studying?
Excuse me, taking what?
How can I help my brother to focus on his studies when he prefer to play games in his smartphone
Hmm.
instead of studying po?
Well, one I can suggest first that I think if he prefer most the games on his or her on his cell phone, I think I don't want to judge, but I think uh, you don't have clear guidelines on what time he's supposed to play, use the gadget at home. If the child has the liberty, the world to always use a cell phone for games, online games, then that will be a struggle for you to do when classes begin. So what I can do is the one that I suggested. You can let the student, your brother, do the schedule first. That Be firm with it. You are only allowed to play your games at a certain age. Never say you can never play. All right? Don't do that. Or just allot a certain time of the day where he or she is allowed to play. That's what he will be looking for. Let that be a reward for the learning, for the effort of learning he will be doing the whole day. So say at the end of the day, say 5 o'clock onwards, you can play anything you like. But at 8 o'clock, you're supposed to stop. After dinner, you can still play, but at exactly 8 o'clock, you'll have to stop because you need to do 30 minutes to an hour study of the lessons that you just discussed. Remember, it is very important for memory skills. So at home, it's very important for them to do a study before going to sleep to recall what they have learned that day. Remember the memory skills of what we call as reflection, all right? Reflection is very important for them to be able to recall what they have learned that day, and then it's a way of helping them to do a certain routine and be part of their strategy and technique so that they can learn things more at home given the schedule. So again, do not deprive the child of playing games on using his cell phone, but situate it on a certain time. Next would be there is the application that I provided you with. We have the School Track, the Habitica, and all the other online platforms, application that are for free po yun, that can be gamified. Pwede pong gawing games po yun. Even the lessons of the teachers can be incorporated there in the activity in the application and can be gamified. So students will have more will be more interested to it. So you try to explore those applications that I have provided in my slides. Now, if you want a copy of my slides in handout format, just contact my moderator, Mitch, so we can attach the file later on. I think that will be possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you po, Brother Ricky. That's all the question we have for now. Any last reminders po to our
Of
viewers for
course.
today?
So just an additional information how we can help our kids, our brothers, our nephews and nieces improve their memory skills while learning at home would be one, eat well. So there's what we call as brain food for our students. So probably during the learning days, you may want to balance out, not too much carbohydrates, but just enough carbohydrates for kids to in their meals. More protein perhaps, or more brain food would help them, like meat. You have chicken, fish, eggs that would help them, boost their brains. Okay, brain food. So just and fruits as well, and fruits. If substitute for carbohydrates would be root crops, would also be best to boost the brain capacities and the brain power of our kids. So diet is one of my suggestions though. All right. Next would be getting enough sleep. You have to make sure that during the days, the school days from Monday to Thursday night, our students are guided to have at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Research thoroughly show that students who do not get enough sleep, their brains get slower than normal. All right, the processing gets slower than it should be because the mind is not working at its optimum level because it did not get enough sleep. Our brain organizes information even if we are asleep. So the longer we sleep, especially in the REM, okay, the rapid eye movement stage, our minds are actively reorganizing, organizing, storing the information that we worked on in the working memory during the whole day. So it will be easier for students to, it's easier for the brain to organize and store the information, reorganize information while sleeping if they studied or reviewed the lessons before going to sleep, all right? And when they wake up the next morning, they feel better because they had enough sleep and some of the information have went through REM and have been, reorganized and incorporated in the long-term memory. My third additional suggestion is do physical exercise. Very important that in the day's activity, and if you review again my webinar the first week of July when I talked about positive discipline through home scheduling, I incorporated daily exercise, at least 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes exercise, because it boosts the brain, the serotonin. It boosts the serotonin. It boosts the brain to excrete serotonin, the happy hormone, which, makes the brain easy and predisposed to learning. That can be done after, perhaps after the lesson for that day, or it could be done before the day's grueling activity of, learning things. Next would be, well, definitely I hope that, especially for the high schools, the parents would not allow their kids to drink alcohol and so on and so forth. So uh, at the elementary, definitely we can control our children to not to drink alcohol, smoke, and drug abuse. But for the high school, I think some of our high school students have already tasted smoking and alcohol, and to the point that, some of them are smoking. That's not good because it really destroys the mental capacity and diminish our mental powers. So you may want your kids to not be exposed early on to smoking and alcohol, especially drugs. Okay. And finally, we have avoid stress. A little stress, especially, helps our students in the learning process, because if there's no stress, we call it a disequilibrium. If there's no disequilibrium, the brain will not see that there's a need for it to adjust or to modify existing information. But if there's a little, but with a little stress, it helps in the like questions, quizzes, and tests and activity that they need to accomplish that day. That's a little stress. But if there are a lot of stress, like the kids have to do a lot of things at home and then study at the same time and do errands and so on and so forth, it does give our kids a lot of stress, and more often than not, they're not able to focus on one certain task because of, of multitasking. That's why I do not encourage at the very young age multitasking, because it does not help them focus on what they're supposed to learning. So let them avoid stress as much as possible. Unnecessary, I would say unnecessary stress. So to help them focus more on what they're supposed to learn that day. Again, it will depend on the cooperation of the family members at home to help teachers, us teachers, help our students learn at home. So my final suggestion, ladies and gentlemen, on teachers, please incorporate this memory skills development enhancement technique in your modules development and in your online materials development. With that being said, thank you very much. I had a blast with you, even if I do not see you. But I know, knowing that you're out there, and together we are learning and trying our best to work together and be able to help our kids right now with, of course, again, a new declaration of the MECQ. It really is a task for each teacher in the Philippines, but we do our best, not just for our sake, not just for our kids' sake, but also for all the students out there who may have problems, be struggling learning things during the pandemic. If they have already been struggling in the learning process at school, I tell you, they will struggle even more at home because of the lack of the environment that we provide them at school. So with that being said, let us see the parents and the family members at home as our partners and enlist them as part of our journey in making sure that our students learn a lot at home during the pandemic. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you again tomorrow afternoon. I don't know, tomorrow morning, but tomorrow on my two topics on teaching comprehension of informational texts, which I will incorporate what I've discussed today on the graphic presentations. And in the evening, I'll be discussing teaching comprehension across subject areas. With that, again, thank you very much and have a nice day.
There we have it. So, in behalf of Vibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank our speaker for today for always giving us an insightful and comprehensive learning session. It is always an honor to have you with us, Brother Ricky, and to all our Kabibal viewers. All thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Muli maraming salamat and have a nice day. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye po.
Goodbye.